Hello and welcome back. I am the worst at this channel, but bear with me. Today I am doing a video on how I became a teacher. So I've gotten kind of like different requests on things I did to become a teacher, what tests I had to take, and just different steps. And so I thought I would just put it all in one video for you. So I have my little sticky notes that are gonna help me get through this, because looking back at it, I feel like there weren't like that many steps, but it has been such a long freaking road to get to being a teacher and officially having my license, which is so exciting. So my tip number one is to pick the college that you feel like fits best with you. So there are a bunch of different routes that you can kind of do this by. So one of the biggest things I think when picking the college is, for one, do a tour and see if you like the college. My second thing is, when you're going into education, a lot of times you want to find a school that has the right program for you. So some schools don't always, for example, have a middle school. Like if you just want to be a middle school teacher, they don't always like have a program for that. My school actually, like within the last 2 years, actually kind of came up with this like middle childhood. It's kind of focused more on middle school age range, I believe. And so, I mean, imagine if I was looking at this school 4 years ago, like if they didn't have like that age group that I really wanted to focus on, that may have not been my top choice of school. So I like to look at that a lot. Another thing kind of with the education program is, for example, if you want to be a special education teacher, I'm just using this for example because my school didn't really have like a full-on special education program. We only had like an inclusion program, which kind of limited you a little bit on later in life getting a job in that curriculum because you didn't have as much training versus a school that had a specific special education program. So when looking for schools, I like to look at, do I really like the college for one? Because that's going to be like number one. If you're going to stay there, you've got to like it. And that sounded so dumb thinking back on it. You gotta just like the town that you're gonna live in, because you're gonna be there for a while, let me tell ya. 2, make sure that your school has the program that you really want to do. That was my first step. That's kind of like pre-college thinking about it. Step number 2 is I had to take and pass all of my gen ed classes. A lot now when you go to college, they're not requiring you to take as many gen ed classes, but at my school they did. And during that time, I also took a like education course. So if you're able to, talk with your advisor when you're going off to college and be like, is there any way that I can get into like even a basic level education class? Because that's kind of like the stepping stone to see if you actually do like education. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a basic education course and after that other students in the class were like, this isn't for me. So I suggest doing it right away, getting your foot in the door a little bit, your feet wet. If you haven't had the opportunity to be in a classroom too much, taking a basic level education class is going to be really helpful for you. And my step 3 was taking the Praxis 1. This literally feels like centuries ago that I took this test, but I actually just made a video on how to pass the Praxis 1, so that might be a good video to check out. So I needed to pass the Praxis 1, I feel like it was kind of like my first year of college, first year and a half of college, so you have a little breathing time. But I had to pass the Praxis 1 exam. That was kind of my first exam for educators to get through. First little hurdle to get through, so as we like to say in the education world. My next step was getting admitted into the School of Education. So I had to pass the Praxis 1 in order to be admitted into the School of Education. So that was kind of like the guideline. You had to have like a good GPA and pass the Praxis to get into the School of Ed. So once I was in the School of Ed, the next step was, after passing and getting admitted into the School of Ed, we were admitted into Block 1. In this block, I also had a lot of really fun opportunities. Like 4 days a week for about 1 hour at a time, I was doing a practicum, which I was in a 3rd grade classroom. And I was kind of doing whatever the teacher asked us to do, but we were also focusing a lot on how the students were reading. Because in Block 1, you're focusing a lot on how children read. We're prepping a lot for the Foundations of Reading test, which I will talk about in a little bit. and all the steps on how to pass that and how to eventually teach a child how to read. And so we had a lot of hands-on experiences in Block 1, which I thought was really fun. And then after Block 1, that was a semester, I moved into Block 2 for my second semester of like my senior year. Let me know what that. But in Block 2, this is when I was taking classes, but I was also working on passing the Foundations of Reading test. I know the Foundations of Reading test, if you've heard anything about it, is extremely daunting, but I have a video linked down below on how to pass the Foundations of Reading test, and I am on the other side, and I am not disheveled. I am alive and doing so well. Looking back on it, it was one of the hardest tests I've ever had to take in my life, but it felt so good to get through that and knowing that I can get through something really hard when you put that effort forward. So if you want to check that out, I would love and appreciate that so much. So also in Block 2, we were having a ton of hands-on experiences, which was getting really exciting because it's like student teaching is closed, I'm about to be a teacher. And so we also had a practicum that actually shut down for 2 weeks. And so during those 2 weeks, I was in a classroom nonstop every day, all day, and I was actually lead teaching some experiences. I think in math and science I was lead teaching. And so that was really cool to be like lead teaching, and I wasn't even in student teaching yet, but giving me kind of a glimpse at what it might be like. And so that was a really helpful experience as well. So I really enjoyed Block 2. It was heavily focused on our education courses, which was really nice because it's hard to stay motivated to want to be like a teacher when you're taking all your gen eds and you know that has no relation to what you're going to be learning in your education classes. So finally, to have education classes all day was the best. So also, another step to becoming an educator in my world was I also had a minor in early childhood education. So this meant that I needed to do an early childhood education student teaching placement prior to my actual student teaching placement. So I ended up going all the way to Aldine, Texas. So I went during a winter break, to all the way to Aldine, Texas, and I student taught in a 4K classroom. And so this was just like an incredible experience because I was in a completely bilingual school. And so I did 2 weeks in Texas. I stayed with a host family and I taught every day, all day, kind of like my 2-week practicum near my college. So that was also part of getting my license. So once I finished that, I kind of had my early childhood education minor out of the way because I had taken majority of my education classes for early childhood already. So moving on, after that, I was finally ready to take my Fort exam. I passed it and I was ready to get a student teaching placement. So after you pass the Fort, my school requires that you have the Fort pass before you can student teach, which I know some schools don't have this requirement. In the moment when I was really stressed out about the Fort, it kind of sucked knowing that like I would have to take a semester off of school if I didn't pass it in time, but I did and it was all good. Everything's good in the world again after I passed it and I was able to get my placement. So I kind of tell the area that I want to be in, and then my college sends out my application to local schools and they kind of select me almost. So they look at like my resume, if they have a teacher that is willing to take me. And so I ended up moving to Madison, Wisconsin, and I got a student teaching placement in the area. And so I had 2 different placements because my license required me to have a lower elementary and a higher elementary. So for the first 8 weeks, I was in a 2nd grade classroom. I was on top of the world in that classroom. I loved it so much, and I still see my 2nd grade babies in the hallway and it's the best. So I was at a school for a 2nd grade placement and my 2nd placement was kind of funky. I know a lot of times people will get their 2nd placement within the same school, but I was actually at a completely different school, but within the same district. So during my second placement, I was in 4th grade. So going into 4th grade, it was a little intimidating because I had had 4th grade experiences before and it just wasn't my jam. And so it was really a learning experience being in 4th grade. But looking back on it, I am so grateful that I did it and stepped outside my comfort zone and know that like I can totally teach 4th grade one day. So I finished that placement and finally graduation came. And that was so exciting to finally graduate college after so much work. But the only downfall of it was I still had a month of student teaching left. So after graduation, I finished up my student teaching placement and I then, on the last day of student teaching, was able to apply for my license. So the license took about maybe like 1 to 2 weeks. It really was a lot shorter than they told me, but then I was finally able to get my license. So that only happened like a couple months ago, so it's all still really fresh and new to me. And it feels crazy to know that I finally actually have my license, and I'm just so proud of everything I've done to get to this point, and if I can ever help any of you in the future on getting to that point, or if there's any videos you'd like me to make, maybe my student teaching placement, things that you should do during student teaching. I'm applying to jobs really soon, so I don't know if I could ever make like interview tip videos, but please let me know in the comments down below anything that you would like to see, and I appreciate you watching this video so much. And I will see you in the next one. See you guys.